Hey guys, Sid from Sid's Trains here, and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about my observations and what I think is causing Lionel products to have issues when they are released and obtained by the customers or the people that pre-order them, or even down the road a couple years after the product is made. Now, this whole thought process of what is causing these issues with Lionel products came about because recently the new Lionel GS series of engines that are the most recent Vision Line product came to hobby shops and train stores, and people have been running them. And I've heard about the issues that have been occurring, and I've seen the issues because I have friends that purchased GS locomotives. The only two engines that I've seen are the GS1 and the GS4. I have not seen the GS2, 3, 5, or 6. Though the platform is kind of the same for the 2 through 6 in the sense that the boilers are very similar and the design of the chassis are very similar. Obviously, there are cosmetic differences, but the overall look and design of them is very similar. The GS1 is a completely different model. It is a brass hybrid, so the chassis is die-cast, the shell is an all-new brass tooling. But this video isn't just about the GS series that just came out. It's kind of Lionel in general and how they are developing their products and then releasing them and the final product and what it really is. So I'm going to be talking about my observations, what I think is happening, and none of this is definite. It's not fact, it's just my observations, and I could be totally wrong, and I could just be totally wrong, and Lionel could be doing the right thing, and it's just luck that is causing the issues to come about. But in my opinion, I think it's not just bad luck. I think there are some uh, issues or things Lionel isn't doing that could be resolving those issues that are coming about. So to start out, what are the issues that Lionel products have, and in particular the higher end products? I rarely hear about Lionel starter sets or um, even Lion Chief engines having very many problems. There's always problems with products, but rarely do I hear about those. And I want to mention again, I am not bashing Lionel. I am not saying they suck. I'm not one of those guys that just thinks, oh, they suck because this engine has some issue with it and I'm never going to buy from them again. No more. No, this is not that kind of video. I'm not that kind of person, and personally, I haven't experienced a lot of issues, and I'm also a person that can work on trains and fix the issues myself, so I'm not always heartbroken or upset in a crazy way when the trains have issues. But I just wanted to mention that again. I am not bashing Lionel. I am just observing things and kind of taking the more specific things and looking at it in a more broad way and maybe a way that Lionel could fix what's going on. And if I am right, they could fix it and people might be more happy with the products. I am happy with Lionel products. I think they are amazing. But some people don't, and there's always issues, and I think there are ways to reduce those issues and defects and problems. So I'm going to be talking about what I think Lionel might not be doing that they have done in the past, and if they were to start doing that again, it will resolve the issue. So what I think Lionel isn't doing or is compromising or taking away steps in is the design process. The design process is a 6-step process, or it could be more because there's many different versions of the design or engineering process. but the design process is a 6-step process that I know of. I know by a 6-step process, but of course, as I said before, there's other ways. But the 6-step version is ask, imagine, plan, create, experiment, and improve. Those are the steps you take in solving an issue, or in Lionel's case, producing a product and having it come to life. First of all, you need an idea or an issue to solve. In Lionel's case, they need a train to make. So they need to figure out what people want, or what they want, or what's something good just to produce in general. So that's the ask. So in their case, they can research what's popular at the time, research the engine in general that they might want to produce, and figure out what the problem is, and again, in their case, what is the engine that is going to be produced. The next step is imagine. They need to imagine what they think the product is going to be like. So, is it going to be this steam engine that has whistle steam and blowdown and a coal feature in the tender? Or is it going to be a diesel with crazy ditch lights? I don't know, crazy paint job? Just imagine what the product is going to be. Sketch it on paper, put it into CAD on a computer. Come up with the idea that you are going to produce. You can't produce something without an idea, and they need to imagine that idea. They can't just say, here is the engine, then produce it. They need to imagine it. The next thing is plan. So they need to plan out what is what. What kind of sounds is it going to have? Is it going to have 2 speakers, 1 speaker, 3 speakers, smoke units? How many smoke units? How many? In Lionel's case, they do a lot of paint schemes and a lot of road names. So plan out all these little different things, and also plan out the engine itself, or in another case, the passenger car. This process works for everything. I'm just mainly talking about engines, as the engines is where Lionel is kind of falling short, at least in my opinion. And mainly in the newer products. The older products that Lionel's made are amazing, and even new products are amazing, but it's these high-end engines that keep having these issues, and I see the issues. I personally don't have them very often, but I see them, and people are getting very frustrated with that, and people are skeptical and kind of hesitant about Lionel products, because is it going to work right when I get in the box, or is it just going to fail when I take it out of the box? So they that's kind of the issue they're having. But back to the point of the design process, the planning, they just have to put things in place so that when they do go to create a prototype, or create the catalog design for it, or how many road names and everything about it, they just have to have the plan for it. The next step is create. You have to create the item. Obviously, if there's 12 road names, they don't have to create 12 road names yet. They need to create a prototype where they can test not just 1, not just 2. They need to create lots of prototypes so that they can test multiple engines and have multiple engines to look at. If you have just one, one's not very good, because it's not going to tell you what a batch of them will do when you produce them. So once again, you need to create it, which Lionel creates prototypes, and they're doing well with everything up to this point. The next step is where I believe, based on my observations of their products and the issues they have when they come to the customers, is experiment. That's the next step, is experiment. Lionel doesn't seem like they're testing things very much. We see on YouTube demos with Dave, you see their test track. Obviously they test things, but are they testing them enough? One of the best cases where I saw Lionel using the design process and experimenting was the production of the 1990 700E Hudson. TM Books and Video did a video on the production of that Hudson. And there was a section where they showed this room that had, I believe, 3 tables that were stacked on top of each other. And they all had loops of track with a 700E on it, with usually like a flat car with a 3 to 4 pound weight on it, I believe. And that is testing. And they weren't just testing for an hour or two. These engines were running for like 24 hours on this computerized track. And if the train stopped or had any issues, the computer cut power to them, and the computer logged data of when it stopped. The people would come in, say the next morning, see the issue, they would resolve it and keep testing. That is testing at its best. You push it to its limits so that you know there's going to be no issues whatsoever. One of the biggest issues with Lionel steam engines, usually, even diesels, but I usually see this in steam engines, is smoke units. The smoke units work for maybe 5 minutes or so when someone might get a new train, and then it stops and the cab light turns on and flashes, and it's usually the element that isn't working. So the fan might be running, but there's no smoke coming out, or the other way around. There's smoke coming out, but it's not being puffed out, or at idle, it's not just streaming out with the fan, so the fan isn't working. There's lots of things that could cause that. Cheaply made fan motors, poor wiring, overall just a badly produced product. I will talk about that later. I don't think Lionel products are horribly produced. I just think there are sometimes oddballs, and with social media and Lionel producing still a lot of product, you get to see a lot more of those oddballs that don't work. In the past, there wasn't as much of a outlet to show all those issues, so maybe we don't know about what was happening, say, 10 to 15 years ago when Lionel was producing products. But I think there still are a lot of issues, and they just aren't experimenting based on my observations of the smoke units not working. In the case of the brand new GS series engines, I know of 2 people so far that have cylinder steam not working, and one of them doesn't have stack steam working. Both have the fans running, but the elements aren't on, and the cab light isn't flashing, so it's kind of weird. And one of them noticed that right before it stopped smoking, it was just pouring out smoke. So for my technical stand, or since I know what happens on the inside of trains and what happens with smoke units, since I've worked on so many, that makes me think the element just burned up. It just completely burned itself to the ground and then stopped working. The fans are still on, which is kind of weird, and the cab light flashing is weird, but these are new engines, so I don't know as much about these as, say, something from a couple of years ago. And this just shows me, did Lionel never experience that? Did they never run trains for hours on end and have a smoke unit fail? Did they not test more than one prototype? It's just kind of weird. Like, why is this happening? I'll get to production quality later, but it just seems so odd for stuff like that to happen. I want to keep emphasizing that I'm not bashing Lionel. I'm just making observations because I'm looking at this in a very broad way. I'm not just looking at it specifically as one engine. I'm taking a look at mainly all the high-end legacy and TMCC and Lion Chief engines in this and at this time, with Lionel producing so many products. there's not usually a lot of issues with freight cars, passenger cars, and train sets. Recently, there was an issue with the milk cars Lionel produced, but if you want to hear about that, go on YouTube and search the Lionel milk car, and there'll be videos about complaints on them. But back to the design process and experimenting, it just seems like they aren't experimenting a lot, and that's causing their products in the end to not be as good as they could be. Because if you test trains for 24 hours or more, then you know they can run for long periods of time and have no issues. So that's kind of my take on what Lionel might not be doing in the experimenting side of things. The next step is improvement. You always get production samples from the factories over in China or Korea or Vietnam or wherever it is. It always depends on the company and the product. But over in Asia is a nice general term for that now, because there's so many factories. But you get production samples from Asia, and you need to take a good look at them, test them, and experiment again for hours on end. Do they work the way they're supposed to be? Do they sound right? Do they smoke well? Do they look good? Like, another issue Lionel has is getting the paint colors right. I personally think Lionel should get a new paint supplier because they don't seem to have a lot of paint colors, but we'll see what happens with that. But just check everything out and write down those issues, and then go back to your manufacturer and set a quality standard. If you want a high quality product, you need to tell your factory that. If you don't tell your factory that, well, then they're going to just think, let's just be as lazy as possible and just give them a product. Don't make it as good as possible. Let's just give them a product so our lives are easy. Well, Lionel wants a high quality product. Tell your factories and your suppliers and your people over in Asia, we want a high quality product. And if you don't enforce that, then it's not going to happen. So you need to enforce that. Something I think Lionel should do is have someone that literally lives over in Asia and goes to the factories and speaks all the different languages so that they can talk with them, see the trains being produced, and make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to be. Back to the idea of smoke units. Make sure the smoke unit fan motors are good. Like, if you go to the supplier, do tests on them. Don't just find the cheapest product and buy them. Do tests and make sure they're good. In the factories, do lots of tests before the products get shipped out. Make sure the smoke units work. Make sure the item can go up like in the production of the 90s Hudson, the 700E Hudson, they made the train go up a grade in a certain amount of time, and if it didn't work, they put that train aside and fixed it and tried it again. They need to do that kind of stuff and make sure it works. Something else that there's issues with is parts being broken when they show up. First of all, no product should leave the factory broken. If a train is being put in a box and it breaks, you need to take it back out, fix it, then put it in a box to be shipped. With FedEx in the US and the shipping company across the oceans, because the products don't just magically show up in America, they're shipped on boats. I don't know if Lionel uses air at all. I'm pretty sure it's all on boats. But you can't totally make sure nothing will happen, but you can limit it. Make sure that your packaging is good. Design the packaging to be able to withstand lots of shaking and up and down movement and vibration. Don't just make a foam box and throw the train in it and say, oh, that's good. You need to engineer a box for it. And to engineer that, use the design process, make sure it works, and then there you go, got a perfect product. If Lionel doesn't do all of this, it just causes chaos. It might mean their lives are easier in a way, but if you think about it, if the product is not going to come to the customer working perfectly, it's just going to have to come right back. And then customer service is going to be overwhelmed. Engineering is going to be overwhelmed because they don't know what's going on. And it's just going to drive the company crazy. And it almost seems like that right now because Lionel Customer Service, they're very kind people and they do their best, but there's not a lot of them, so they can't keep up with the demand and the need for repairs. And that just causes this chain reaction of trains are broken, people want them fixed, but then things get delayed, people get mad, and then people are just outraged and they just cannot deal with what's going on. And I just think Lionel could possibly resolve these issues they have with trains, which from my observation is smoke unit issues, electronic issues, and production quality issues if they use the design process. They probably do use the design process, but I'm observing things that make me believe that they are cutting corners on some of the steps, which is mainly, from what I see, experimenting and improving, because they're not making sure their train is going to work the way it's supposed to, and they're not enforcing the high quality standards. And thus, there's going to be electrical issues, and then when the train is produced, it's going to have those electrical issues, along with cosmetic and production defects. And in the end, people will just be upset, which a lot of people are upset right now about the Vision GS series engines. Personally, I'm not outraged because I didn't buy a $2,000 engine and have it not work, but think about that. You pay $2,000, you expect the train to work, but it doesn't. That will be very annoying. So, in the end, Lionel's just overlooked the design process from my observations. Once again, I could be totally wrong. Lionel could be doing everything the way I just said it should be done, and bad luck is just causing all this, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I highly doubt that. There's things that they're probably cutting corners on, and in turn, that's just causing issues with their products. I love Lionel. I'm never gonna want them to go out of business. I'm never gonna bash them for being a piece of crap company. Some people say they are just totally an awful company and they should not be around. I disagree with that. I think they are an amazing company. They support this hobby. They're one of the last O-gauge manufacturers in 3-rail. That is, there are 2-rail manufacturers, but they're the biggest, and they've survived through so many things, and I think they will survive through what seems like a hard time in a sense. They're just having issues with how they're doing things, and I think if Lionel gets their act together with their design process and how they produce their trains, I think their products will be even better than they already are. The GS series is an amazing series of engines. They are beautiful. The sounds are amazing. So many new features. And I give Lionel all the credit for making such an amazing product. And all I can say is that was my take on why Lionel might be having issues with their production. That's all I have for today's video. As always, like, Subscribe and click the bell for notifications, comment below, and tell others about the channel. I'm Sid, and I'll see you next time, guys.